Thinking about the taste of crab and rice or that tie that you're going to get? Feel like you're missing out because your fathers or grandfathers are not here? Pause. Think about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what my boys got to say, Devonn and Dominique, and how they think about what fatherhood means to the millennials and digital natives. Join our co-sponsors, Page Investment Limited and Dom Dev Enterprises Limited, and our friends at Islandese Realty Chicken Limited, Sammy's Chicken, and D1 Development. Post your questions, like, share, and follow, and we will answer all the questions that you have. We will be right back.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. This evening, we ask you to think that what we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And what we imagine, we can achieve. Let's change the narrative 2 for 2. This evening, I have the honor and pleasure to having on the show with me my 2 boys, which got my mouth all tied up today. I don't know why, but they do. So we have Devonn Knowles, top right-hand corner, as you can see, and Dominique Knowles at the bottom center. Welcome, Dev and Dom.
Thanks, Pops. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dom. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Dev, you're a millennial. You went off to school. You got your degree from Embry-Riddle University. You also have that's a mechanic, airplane mechanic, and you also have a business management degree. And so far, you've come back and worked in the States and now in the Bahamas with the airline services. You also joined R.I.S E, which you can speak of in a bit, and you have been an avid sportsman over the years. Dominique, you're an artist, and you likewise have gone off to school, but you haven't returned, but that's fine. You got your degrees, you got a Master's of Fine Arts, and you have your bachelor's degree in art and education. And so you have also been an avid sportsman. Both of you all started out in swimming and switched to the other sports. And Dom, you ended up doing equestrian. Both you all competed at the national level, the international level, however you want to put it, and were highly successful. So there's a lot of things going on for you, and there's a number of other things that you can add to those long profiles that you had, bios. But welcome, and tell us, how does it make you feel to be millennials and digital natives today in today's world? You start with you, Dev.
You start with me. Repeat that question one more time.
How does it make you feel to be in your age group?
How does it make me feel?
And you're set. That's the youth your
It's like an up and down type of journey. You know, start off, obviously as a child, you don't really understand what the world really is about. And then when I went to college, and I really started to understand how systems operate, how countries operate, how different cultures operate. That gave me some clarity to what the world really is. And to sum that all up to today, I realized that, different generations, we have completely different mindsets, especially the fact that millennials we grew up in both eras. We grew up in the era before social media, and we grew up while social media was starting to become popular, and now it's super popular. So we get a little bit of both worlds, but it's different in a good and bad way.
Awesome. And how about you, Dom?
I feel that millennials are always like on the front stage, like there's no backstage with millennials or Gen Z. So which is like what JD Smith talks about sometimes. And it, I think millennials have a brain that is in the virtual world, but also in the real world at the same time. So things are a bit more like um, contrasting in the way that we live. So it creates more interesting, like movements and styles.
Okay. So if we look at some of the things that you all had on your bios, there you mentioned R.I.S E. Tell us what is R.I.S E? Oh, why R.I.S E?
Well, R.I.S E is a non-profit organization, and it stands for Reform, Inspire, Strengthen, and Educate. And the reason why me and a group is a group of some people from Sanans, our president from Sanans, and some is about 5 or 6 of us who came together and decided that, hey, the Bahamas has too much crime. We have too many young men, young boys growing up wanting and are gangsters, and that life, to me, it never made sense, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to give you credit because you grew me up on watching gangster movies. So at a young age, I was able to see what the end result was on 90% of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And even though during the movie it looks cool to, make money and have guns and do illegal stuff and whatever, and, have a lot of power, but at the end of the day, it didn't make sense for me to want to rot in jail for 40 plus years or die at 25 years old because I wanted to be a gangster.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just mainly just to try give young people another avenue because I think it's all information, and I think their information is criminal information, and we feel as if we understand where they're coming from and why they thinking that way. So we just are trying to give them a different perspective of life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, Dom, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of you're an artist and you're a poet and a number of things, and you are an activist in terms of animals and the like. Tell us a little bit about all of that stuff.
So I went to the school at Art Institute of Chicago for my bachelor's degree from when I was 17 until 21. So that was 2013 until 2017. And then I did a year of work at Iceberg Projects, which is a gallery run by Dr. Dan Berger, who owns it and is at his home. Then after that, I went to grad school at SAIC in Chicago until 2020. So I graduated on Zoom in the virtual world. So that was very interesting. And then I did more art shows as usual, and then continued. And now I'm having exhibitions in Europe and the US this year. So I'm just traveling to go to those different events. And then also with horses, I
Now,
was at
before
the
you leave,
Winter
so
Equestrian Festival in
where's art
Florida.
taking you?
Yeah.
Where's art taking you? Because people would want to know. Yeah.
So I'm in So I'm in Berlin now for a show, and then I go to Paris tomorrow. Um, then back to the Bahamas and Florida to see the horses, and then there's a show in New York, July 15th, and another show in LA by the 31st of July for art.
Hmm.
And the horse show is July 25th until August 14th in Michigan, and then Helsinki, which is August 19th, in Finland, Switzerland in September, and then Paris is October for more art shows.
Wow,
World
cool.
off.
Yep, very good stuff. So Dom, Dev, you got a little bit of artist in you too, because I mean you've been tinkering and banging on one machine there. We got two little cycles on it. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, man. So I just picked up DJing. Um, I would say that was May 2019. That's when I bought my first laptop. The DJing started off because I was looking for a side gig other than the airport, or aviation, I should say. And people are always telling me about passion and find things that you like to do that you would do for free, but then you also could get paid, because it doesn't make sense to do things if you still need money to pay for necessities of life. So I know I always like music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really had to sit down and think about this for weeks to try to figure out what hobby could I pick up that could make me some money at the same time I actually enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out music, I just list down all the things you could be in music. From a rapper to a singer. I can't rap, can't sing. I don't play instruments. Uh, so and then I keep on looking down the list, and disc jockey was an option. Um, Me and my boy Cameron Bruni, shout out to Coach Bruni.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was the first person that I know who had a DJ software on their laptop. So I remember he used to do mixes while he was swimming, you know. So I reached out to him and then just talk it out, go around some DJs to see if I actually like it. And when I realized I actually liked the environment, I liked the craft, I dove all the way in.
Yeah, well, that's great. Actually, the first one you know about was me, but you probably only remember his. Uh, so Dom and Dev, you all both have been athletes, and when I say athletes, super athletes, not like me who was just playing with it, but you all were real athletes. You all used to really compete. Tell us about your loves. How do you all have significant loves within athletics? You start, Dom.
So I started going to the horse stable at 4 years old, and there was this horse Boomer that was a baby and was just born, so I took him around the block and walked him for like 2 years and learned to take care of horses by just visiting them or being with them. And then at 6 years old, I started riding because that was the age to where you can begin lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued that forever and started competing in Florida from 2010. And George Mackey, my grandfather, got me Tez at 9 years old. So then I had him until February of this year. And now there's this new horse, Danny, in Florida, who is from France, that is helping me learn a lot with him as well. And so I just see him or compete with him whenever I can. And usually I just jump like a meter, which is like 3 feet or so. And uh, it's based in the equitation division, which is based on the rider, and it's a little bit like ballet, but also athletic and sporty, like show jumping, which you see in the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics. So it's a mixture of
Right.
everything.
Cool. You, Dev?
But you started me off in your sport. You said you wasn't as competitive, but you actually went further than all of us, in sports. So, you got me off in baseball, then, I didn't like that. Start off playing soccer. Soccer was cool until a big kid hit me in my shin pad and flipped me over, and I was like, nah, this ain't making no sense. Then I went to swimming because shout out to Matthew Lowe. Me and Matthew was playing soccer for insurance management for QC, and he also was swimming at the time. So sometimes, well, all the time actually, we would go to practice for 7 a.m. at QC on the soccer field, and swimming was also going on at 7 a.m. But he would leave practice at like 9 o'clock to go swim, and it always looked like he had so much more fun swimming than playing soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So started swimming, and then I was decent enough to make the nationals, make some other teams, some national Bahamas teams. And once I realized that I didn't really love swimming as much to try take it to the next level as in going to the Olympics, that was around grade 11, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to play basketball because I was always playing basketball even when I was swimming. So during lunchtime, we would play basketball. Even when we were swimming, we would play basketball or football before practice. I was always interested in team sports more so than individual sports. So choose basketball, grade 12. I've been playing basketball ever since.
Cool. That's some big stuff. So Sunday was Father's Day, as we all know. Dom, I hope you enjoyed your day all the way up there across the world. And I always say that in terms of fatherhood, that as we say here, I say it is to bring up our children in a God-fearing environment, to educate, to stretch our minds, and to protect them from self-destruction, and to mentor them so that they can reveal the best, unique them that they are, as God has designed and purposed them. Many people, as you had said, was your athletics would have expected me to force you to do baseball. To the point where some people, when they look at you all and your height and sizes and stuff, they would love that you all would have stuck to baseball. But Dominic, you never even got there, but there you started and didn't like the vibe, so you left. Um, Tell me, what did that mean to you guys for me to allow you to do the sports that y'all wanted to do versus me forcing you to do sports that you didn't really want to do?
You want me to start or you want Dom to start?
Anyone, whichever one, got the vibe.
Well, it
Dom, you
was
gotta speak up a little bit. I can't hear you.
it
Sorry.
was it was just really amazing to then spend time with you at the horse shows or at the training sessions like every weekend. So yeah, just it gave me like a freedom, but it also seemed very necessary to be with the horses. And so many mothers are at the horse farms, and it's really rare and special to have fathers there as well, as consistently as you were.
Cool.
That's what's
And
up. Yeah.
so before you go there, but for persons to know, Dominic was a child who was extremely passionate about animals. He had about 100,000 dogs in his room, stuffed dogs. And then when he got hooked, when my beloved took him down to camp it down with Mr. Honorable Pierre de Puch's barn, and he saw the animals, then you would have gotten hooked on horses, and so then you went on a horse binge. And you have a lot of model horses. I still have a couple of them. Do you miss those horses?
I mean, Shamu, I remember that.
Shamu, yeah, but that's you. You had the
Yeah.
Shamu. Yeah. So Dev, tell us about yourself. Yeah.
Well, you know, you know me, and everyone else that knows me knows that I like to give people their flowers while they are alive. You know, especially how I've been a big music lover, and what I've been noticing about music as I get older, people don't really appreciate you until you die. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
Notorious B.I.G. said that in the song, "You're nobody until someone kills you."
Mm-hmm.
So for you to allow us from young to decide what sports we want to do, I have to give you the respect, especially how I've been studying, the Word of God and understanding that, you know, me, you, and Dom, we have three completely different lives. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we came from you, but from what I've been studying, they've been saying is 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 good or great for the father or mother to lead their children into what they like from what God made them to be, not really what you want your child to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that, to take any shots at parents that do that because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, growing up in that aspect, knowing that I didn't have to play baseball, even though me personally thought baseball wasn't as fun as other sports,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. And it made me the person who I am. And that's why I feel as if all three of us are still able to come together and talk about whatever we like, and the other person will at least listen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I had to go into that though. Don't know about that. I had to go into that. I had to learn. I had to learn the
Mm-hmm.
hard way.
Mm. Well, we all learn differently, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a visual learner, so if you could talk to me till the cows come home, it mightn't stick. I gotta either say it and write it, or do it and see it and whatever for it to stick. Cool. So fire and ice is what I used to call y'all. I never used to say it in front of y'all because I know how one of y'all are very competitive in that light, and y'all will figure out why I'm ice and why the next one is fire. But the when we look at that passion, particularly yours, Tom, because Dev has passion, but he just don't express it, and that's why I just call him the the ice. He doesn't say it the same way as you are. Right? There's no question when you thinking something, what's going to happen. Uh, we can know. Uh, so far, one or two things you can do, and so we would sometimes pray that it was the other and not the first. But you mentioned my beloved already, and my beloved did something that I found to be extremely generous because he didn't have to do it. You weren't his child, but you mentioned Taz already, and he bought you Taz, a pony, as a little child. And his view was that he invested in Taz for you so that you could direct your passion towards something constructive and positive and don't get caught up in the crowd and end up using that same passion for something negative. But what he didn't account on was that he was going to be around to see you grow with Taz. And I got left with that bill. But it's a necessary investment, right? And there was a time when I had to make the decision: do we get rid of Taz and then risk you tripping out because we're getting rid of Taz, even though you were very young at the time, or keep ties, and then maybe some stuff with Dev and your mom and the light those myself maybe wanted to do, we didn't have the funds to do. So we kept him, and God took care of everything in this way. You all have grown up to be big, grown, educated uh, men of purpose. And I can't ask for nothing more than that. But when we look at my beloved and Mr. Pierre Depute, Don, what are your thoughts on them?
Well, I feel as if George just got Tez not just because of hippotherapy, which is when horses are used for therapy with people with PTSD or soldiers or people who are in prison or children who are on the spectrum or with autism and people who are alcoholics or like, use horses to get to sobriety. And there's so many different stories where horses like save people's lives, but I think there's many different forms of therapy, and so he chose the horses because he recognized that I had a you know this ability to empathize with animals and dogs. So it was just him being very observant and listening. So it wasn't like he forced me to be with the horses or he uh, retrofitted it to my life. It kind of was he just recognized something in me and then the empathy, and then he just allowed for this vehicle for it to grow and continue to grow. And George did that a lot with everyone that he met. And we used to go to Fox Hill and visit people after school or after sports. And he would take us around to his meetings at work. So you had this range of experiences, and you had to like sit and listen to their meetings or sit and listen to his conversations with people in Fox Hill. So he just was a very empathic person and a really good listener. And at his first session, I remember the school's Queens College in St. Anne's stood on the streets and in Fox Hill. People were calling him my beloved and crying during his funeral procession. Um, yeah. And then Mr. the Fuge is kind of like an architect where you have this ideal or this idea of how the world should be, but then with architecture, it's more of a proposition than an actual place to live. So, and George understood that Mr. Fuge means well and had a vision or has a vision for the
Right.
farm that he created.
So folks, my beloved, or George, as Dominique is referring to him, that's what Dom called him, is the Honorable George W. Mackey. And that's one of their grandparents, Deb and Dom. And the other one is Felix, the Sheriff Knowles. And that would be my dad. And so when you hear these names thrown out, my beloved, most Bahamians know that name. But you in Dubai and New York and England, you might not know the name. That's who we're referring to. So Dev, Dom gets this nice pony. And you see all of this cha-ching going this way and all this time have to be spent up and down to the barns and whatever and stuff. How did that make you feel? Did that crunch your style or anything?
Honestly, I remember, and me and Dom had to talk about this a few years ago. Like growing up, like how you said, you allowed me and Dom to choose whatever sports. You know, my environment and the information that I was getting from my parents or OGs, as they would say, which means older generation. But
Mm-hmm.
I just watch a show now named $1,000,000 Worth of Game, and the guy named Wallow, he said, OGs means offering game,
Mm-hmm.
and game stands for God and me eternally. So before I got to learn that aspect of life, me and Dom, I used to butt heads with Dom about him riding horses or him liking, stuff like that because we in the Bahamas, or majority of Bahamian men, young boys, grew up playing athletic sports that requires a ball,
Mm-hmm.
or something along those lines. So it was hard. It was hard, but obviously it's simple. Everything in life is simple, but it's whether you want to go through it or not. And it came to a point where I realized that nothing I would say is going into Dom's head, and he was doing great stuff. Like I can't even front. Like he was doing great stuff. Like he was winning races. He was winning shows. He was traveling and winning. So it came to a point where I was like, you know, and like I say, like, he's doing his thing. So I ease up to a point,
Mm-hmm.
and then I let him do this thing for a while, and then it wasn't until I think after I graduated college, like, I had to give him his flowers and show him how he inspired me to push as hard as I push now, because I wasn't always someone who goes super hard
Mm-mm.
into what I did. Like you said, you
Not at
call us
all.
fire, yeah, fire and ice. Like, you're right. Like, I was really just floating through life, taking things as they come, So that was the big difference. And then when he got the horse, I wasn't really like jealous or upset. It was more just like, well, if he get a horse, then I want to go off to school to do this sport. Like, I can't go to school to do the sport. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that important to me to where I was envy or jealous of Dom having a horse. Because I
Mm-hmm.
was still playing the sports I wanted to play. I still was able to, be around people that I wanted to be around, especially at the pool. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I still be around swimmers to this day. Like, that's literally, a part of the family. So I don't regret it at all. Shout out to Dom.
Yeah. Cool. Dom get big brother. Dom used to get mad with you though. Because Dom felt that you wasn't listening at all. All you wanted to do was boss him. But I think we all went through that because
Yeah.
um, I think Denzel has the same expressions. I had the same expression. Everybody thinks that somebody older than them was just one boss them and the like. We still got people who want boss us, but that's another story for another day, right? So
Fuck.
when we look at all of these things now, and then we looked at the scenario where we talk about we were in the same household, and then there came separation and the like. I had to move out and what have you, and so y'all were there for a period of time where, in essence, you did not have me in the house, so there was no father there for you, and the like. How did that impact your life?
It was
Or how did I adjust for that? Or how did you adjust for that? Yeah.
it was big. It was a big shift in life. But I also have to give you credit because you still was doing the same things you would normally do. So even though we was all living under one roof, you know, you still was taking us to school. You still was coming to our swim meets or horse shows. So like the only difference was we wasn't really eating dinner together every night, or I didn't get to watch a little bit of the game with you or just talk to you a little bit before bed. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and then we create a program to where we still able to spend time with you. But it was different because we had to adjust our lifestyles also because you know we have we have our lives in life. So yeah, I was around swimming, and after swimming, we used to hang out together and stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't really do certain things no more because now on the weekends I go by you, and I'm not saying it to complain or
Right.
it's just like it was like, damn, like I have to make a choice now. Like, do I want to spend time with my father, or do I want to go have some fun with my brothers and sisters who I swimming with? So besides that, I feel that after a while, it was starting to get normal, and we just adjust. Just like
Mm-hmm.
life, you gotta make adjustments, or you fall behind.
Right. Cool. Dom, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, well, Dev had 3 years more time when everyone was together, but for me, I, just flowed with it, or it kind of became more like a condition that was perhaps like easier to like adapt to the like in terms of memory that this is like how it kind of always was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the difference was that it just changes your relationship to movement and place. Like if you're like a young adult and you have parents that are still together, you find people would refer to like going back home, and it's like this one like place that they would refer to, and it's like kind of like heavier. But then when you have to, visit people on weekends or others during the week, it just means that you have to be more flexible and you have to move a lot. And so I feel like growing up, you just have ability to go to people and be brave enough to go towards people and not always wait for people to come to you. So I think it just gave you a different strength or a
Perspective.
skill
Mhm.
that uh, a sense of place could be multiple homes. You can have multiple homes, and you can also uh, approach people and go to people and visit people. So it's just a different way of being in the world.
So when I came to pick you all up in the morning for school to take you back up to QC and then to St. Anne's and the like. So I used to play in the car for me also, but mainly so that I could ensure that you all were getting some positive, constructive self-development type stuff in your head in the background, even though you might have been paying attention to it intentionally. At least once it grows in the background, that becomes the dominant thought. And so we used to play a lot of the people like Larry Winters and like who was telling a lot of jokes, but they were telling success stories. Do you all remember any of that? Did that have any impact on your lives?
Car rides. Do I physically remember listening to audio tapes about success? No, but I always know your energy. I always get to feel your energy in the morning. Regardless if you was playing the audio tapes, or you was playing Michael Jackson, or you was playing Buju Banton,
Mm-hmm.
or you was playing Bob Marley. They all
Bob,
have a lot of positive. You create a positive environment regardless if we was conscious of what was going on in the
mm-hmm.
background. And we also, we just basing off your energy. Like you not just really come in the car, mad unless, we holding you up because you'll be late for where you have to go next. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's my memory of them car rides.
I also remember like Bush era news on the radio, like asking about the Iraq War or 9/11,
Okay,
and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
understanding how countries relate to each other in that time. And the other day I was watching this film called Old Joy by Kelly Reichardt with Will Oldman in it, and Will is like one of my like artists friends. He's a musician, and they were going to like Will and his friend were going to this like bathing retreat in like the woods for like a camping session, and one of the protagonists was playing instead of acoustic music, he was playing uh, Bush era radio. And then in an interview, Kelly was talking about how she wanted the radio of the news of that time to be on just as a stamp of like the world that we were living in. So then
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of a little bit like charming because I remember our car rides talking about the same thing. But yeah, there's also lots of music too, and podcasts and sports, uh,
In the Jeep with no roof.
radio shows as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us now, what do you look for for what do you look for in fatherhood in this domain that we live in today, or when you were growing up as a millennial and as a digital natives of today? What do they look for in fathership?
What do we look for in fathership?
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, adults tend to do what they seen their parents or other people do, and so they tend to
Yeah,
just follow that. But that doesn't always match what y'all are looking for as you.
I agree. Um, obviously love, the fact that you're here with us, you support us, you know, you encourage us, you don't downgrade us, you don't talk to us like we're not good, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So all those positive words, that goes a long way. And that support goes a long way because, there's a lot of people that don't have their fathers. And from studying their stories, there are multiple stories, it's more than one person, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and comparing them to my story and other people who I'm close with, who fathers are still who are in their lives and still close. I realize is, when I used to play a lot of games growing up, so I'm gonna use the word cheat code. Like having a
Mm-hmm.
father in this world is like a cheat code because there's certain things that a man could tell you that a woman can't tell you, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to keep on the father aspect, obviously, it's just a major plus. Like you are able to guide us and physically protect us throughout life. So it's a big plus because a lot of people out here that don't have fathers look for a male figure
Mm-hmm.
to be supportive, to love them, and to encourage them. And 90% of the people that don't have fathers, they fall into the gangs
Mm-hmm.
because the gangs embrace them, the gangs love them, the gangs feed them, the gangs take care of them, they allow them to stay with them if necessary. The only bad part is they have to do the work that they ask to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's big for me. Super
Yeah.
big.
Well, we just heard last week from Valentino School's Brown, who was a former gang leader of Border Boys in the Bahamas here, and he basically said the way they formed was he called themselves drug babies because it's during the time when a lot of people were on drugs when they had the crack invasion, and so he didn't have any parents. They got victims of the drug era, and so they were just running around like youths, and they just cling together and form their own individual bonds, and those things just kept raising the higher heights, and that's how they got to be strong bonded because they found love and everything in their bond, and then they needed to eat, so they did what they needed to do to eat without
Right.
having anything. Dom, you have any thoughts on that? Not what I just said, but I
What?
mean the question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it's different cultures or societies in the world have like paid paternity leave, whereas when you get towards Europe or the US, it's like less uh, a chance for paid paternity leave. But people like recognizing that, and I feel as if fathers now the priorities are changing or the way they relate to their children or the
Okay.
sense of care and home is becoming a bit uh, more like compassionate and engaged in a different way. So I think because in the 50s and with the after World War II, fathers were a bit more like distant or removed, and then over the generations, fathers are becoming a bit more intimate with
Mm-hmm.
the family and being active participants where they need to take care of their family or children in order to like feel like good participants in the world. So I think that's like really interesting seeing how the family shift, and also it's super intriguing to see John Cox and how he had his family because he's slightly well, he's younger than you. So then seeing how everything evolves over time is, I think, really intriguing.
Yeah, you got that the in between person.
Shout out Uncle
Yeah.
John.
Yep. So we're coming up onto the break now. We probably about 15 minutes or so beyond, but see a lot of comments being posted whilst we were talking. and the like. So it's a lot of interaction, and we encourage the interaction. And so if you have questions or comments and suggestions that you want to put out there, do. Because when we come back from the break, we will start talking in a little bit more detail on their grandparents, my beloved and the sheriff. And so before we go to the break, then we talked about the fact that you were educated and things that stretched your mind to protect you from self-destruction. And Dave, you almost was the one who almost self-destructed more than anybody else, even though you considered people would thought it would be Dominique. But the and then we talk about the mentorship, which came about through a number of people, not just me, that allowed you all to grow and so forth. But you all are also very spiritual people like myself, but you're not maybe necessarily religious, but you're spiritual. What, how does that have any impact on your lives in being tailored to what it is today?
Spiritual aspect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest aspect of my life right now, honestly. You know, um, I listen to a lot of Steve Harvey
Okay.
as far as his motivational videos. So I have a little morning routine every morning, regardless of how I feel, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wake up, first thing I do, drink some water, listen to a motivational video. It's only about 10 minutes. The usual speakers I listen to, Jim Rome, um, Eric Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
and Les Brown and Steve Harvey.
Right.
And Steve Harvey was always bringing up God in his motivational videos. And he just made it seem so simple and so fun. Like, like the fact that uh like God has a plan for you, obviously. He gives you your thoughts, like so me, I want to be super wealthy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose to have that thought. I didn't choose to have that thought to like basketball, or stuff like that. So just more so like understanding like what I like and why I like it and trying to understand what is it he is trying to push me or lead me to.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked after that motivational video, I listened to Pastor Rick Warren. That's a little 20-minute I guess session where he just relates Bible verses and topics to regular life.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I literally just sit there and talk to God and like ask questions. Like how I used to ask you questions about um for example, when I was playing basketball, I was shooting a low percentage from the free throw line. And you always
Right.
just telling me because, you know, my elbow was too high or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally just sit there and ask him questions. Right? Yeah, he cannot physically answer me with a yes or no, and I could physically hear it. But what Steve Harvey taught me to do was ask him for signs.
Mm-hmm.
So, ask him for signs, ask him for guidance, ask him for wisdom, ask him for knowledge, or just ask him for a lot of things.
Right.
And because he always is like, he said the way God operates is a give and receive type of world. That's how he created the world. You have to give something in order to receive something, right? And this is his rules to his world.
Mm-hmm.
So once you understand that whatever you give to him, he has to give you back more, you start to think differently. Like, okay, I'm not gonna ask for 1 pen if
Right.
he isn't gonna give me 2 pens. Like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I'm gonna run out of pens eventually. So
Mm-hmm.
I start upping the ask,
Mm-hmm.
and when I start upping the ask, the receive just start getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So always
Yeah.
thank him first.
Yeah. Provided you were doing the things that he had guided you to be doing. So, Dom, you have a little different perspective on that whole to do. Um,
So art museums are actually kind of like chapels or churches or temples because all of the uh, artworks and sculptures and paintings from these different religions exist in the museum. So you have the paintings that were commissioned by the church from centuries ago in the museum, and they,
Mm-hmm.
depict the myths and stories and parables from the Bible. So you have a visual understanding of it, whereas people who go to church have it in literature in the Bible form.
Okay.
Then you go to the Hindu section, and then you have the statues of the animals, because in Hindu culture, or you have the worship of cows, and you're not allowed to kill cows, or um,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in Christianity, there's a lot of slaughtering and sacrifice of animals. So the relationship to animals are very different in each religion or culture. And Buddhism, you have all of these different gods, and I feel as if they have a relationship to death and nirvana and meditation, and so you have those statues there that represent the gods, and each god is for different purposes. And yeah, but also I understand people who want their children to grow up in the same religion as the parents, so the child has like a foundation to learn like morals,
Mm-hmm.
like the golden rule, which is pretty universal in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get older, you can have a choice, but then there's different conditionings from the practice or the spiritual practice or religion that um, like seeps into people. Like Catholics might have relationship to shame, or Protestants have a work ethic
Mm-hmm.
uh, priority and things like that. And the ceremonies in Christianity, like communion and baptism, it's supposed to be something that's lifelong. So I think this like 21st century secular, like you can choose when you're an adult which religion do you want, even though you were baptized and everything. It's kind of contrary to how the religion sets out its ceremonies. Um, so yeah, I just find it to be a bit more of a learning experience with the spirit of it all,
Oh, awesome,
more so
awesome.
than organized fixed religion.
Mm-hmm. So tell me now, do you two feel that you are living as millennials and digital natives your purpose? Or you still have some things that you want to do before you get to that?
Um, so when you say living my purpose, as in like, I mean, it's obviously you're not gonna complete every goal you have set.
Correct.
But you
Mm-hmm.
mean like, am I on the journey to
Yeah.
reach 100%?
The well, everybody is born with a purpose. At least I believe that. I mean,
Yeah,
so
everyone is. Yeah,
once we find your purpose or on the like, and to me, when people are living their purpose, then things start to grow really fast and really quickly and really big. And their growth goes that way. And I always say to people, that's how you could find if you live in your purpose is for one, you're at peace with yourself, right? And so forth. And you're happy because I mean God is love. And once if you're in that state most of the time, then I mean what you're doing most of the time is in the purpose. Because when you are at peace, then you're doing your purpose. So that's why I was asking you, are you all living your purpose? Or
100%,
or getting towards it?
hundred
Dom?
percent.
Yeah, yes, I
Yeah?
feel
Okay.
so.
Good. Cool. Awesome. Well, you've been listening to Dale Happy Knowles here on Something to Think About. My guest this evening is my two boys, my aces, my ride or dies, those who look out for me. I mean, I get some ladies. I get way more ladies in my life who look out for me than men. But these two here are the men who look out for me no matter what. And they call me up and ask me. Dom might take forever to call, but when he does call, then I mean, you need 2 days to come off the phone because he can pack in all of them things that he didn't call during the 2 months that he mightn't call. so forth. Like the other day when we spoke, I thought Dom was still in New York, and next thing you know, he told me he was in. Where is he again?
Berlin, eh?
Yeah,
Berlin,
Vienna.
Vienna.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
you're in
no,
Vienna.
Berlin is
Yeah.
now, and then Paris is tomorrow.
Right. So you just have to accept that he can be somewhere in the world, right? So that's just the way things are these days. So we're going to take this little commercial break here, and then we're going to come back and dive into their grandparents and what their grandparents' lives mean to them. And we will also hear from some other people what their grandparents meant to them, to help them understand the big picture and what God has put in their arms in order to go out and become the things that He asks them to be. So, Madam Producer, you want to take us to the break?
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
How y'all doing? My name is Dominique Knowles. I'm the coach and founder of 242 242 is the newly established travel basketball team with the aim of trying to get student athletes off to prep schools or college schools with scholarships so that they can further their education but also their basketball playing careers. To this end, July 1st, 2021, we're going away for 4 weeks to Central Florida area to play in some tournaments. We'd be grateful for anybody that's willing to sponsor. Any amount helps. You can get that to me. You can contact me at 806-6257 or you can email me at d1development@gmail.com. That's d1development, d1, number 1, development. We appreciate you all, and here you can see a video of our team.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. This evening we're having a conversation with my two boys, Devonn and Dominique Knowles. And we've been talking about what it means for what fatherhood means for millennials and digital natives. That has been a different era than what most of us has grown up with. Excuse me. We had the baby boomers, then you had the generation X's, then now you have the Y's, the Z's, and I think there's another group coming up shortly also. And so in our society, we one time ago used to have a village where the whole community used to bring up a child, and that has seemed to have been fallen away to now to the point where most of it is YouTube is bringing up a child, if not persons within the immediate area. So what we would want to dive into at this time is the impact of their grandparents and why it is still important for grandparents to be a part of persons' lives, because we've also experienced where some persons are not allowing their children or their grandchildren, or the parents are not allowing their children, the grandchildren, to see their children. For whatever reason it is, we seem to have a growing percentage of that happening. And that doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, if you have a spiteful for your parent or the grandparent, don't take it on the child. Let the child grow. But that's just me. That's my take. But people always say I was a little special. I always had a different take on things as to how things would go. So their grandparents, Dominique and Devon's grandparents, grandfathers, as we are honoring Father's Day, is Felix Alexander Alonzo Knowles, better known as the Sheriff, and George, I didn't forget, Rainey, I think it's Wayne Mackey, better known as my beloved, across the globe. And so we encourage you with all of your tributes and your comments and questions to post them, and we will try and endeavor best to shout them out or to answer whatever you might have, or anything you have that you want to add and share in these two young men's lives that they might not have been exposed to by these two great men in their own right. And so before we go into any of those, then we'll just ask you two young men your thoughts on the two. Now I know one you know less of than the other, but that could be your thought also. William, that's right, William. That's your mommy. She go.
The right honorable George William Mackey.
Yes. Not right, just honorable. Yeah.
Dom, you wanna go?
No, you can go.
All right. Well, like you said, um, Felix died when we was young. I don't have too much memories with Felix, more so about the pictures, especially how he was into car racing. I like cars, and like the same cars he liked. I'm more of a Japanese or German kind of car guy. The Nissans
Wasn't
and
any of
stuff
that
like that,
around when he was driving either. So
compared to the muscle cars or the drag races with the big tires, all that stuff. But George was really, the one that we really spent a lot of time around. I probably would even say we spent just as much as time with George growing up as we did with you and mommy. Because we would spend time with you in the mornings before school. We would go to school. George would pick it up. George, our grandfather, would pick us up from school. Like Dom said earlier, he would take us Fox Hill. He would take us places that I don't even know. I still don't even know where he took us. Just talking to people screaming his name. He was almost like a celebrity that was just so chill. Like it's not the same celebrity as in the States where they freak out and they try to jump on your car or all that extra stuff. But whenever we was out with him, we could guarantee on our one hand, people would call his name. Whether
Mm-hmm.
we at a stoplight, wherever, and he was just so positive.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, yeah, I understood, what he was. I just looked at him as George, as
Mm-hmm.
our grandfather. But it wasn't until I would say after high school. Actually, when I came back home from Texas after
Mm-hmm.
college, when I decided to try to find my purpose. And during that process, doing the RISE program, going into those
In the city. Mm-hmm.
in the cities in ghettos and the hoods or whatever, and
Mm-hmm. Actually, we don't have no ghettos, I mean, that's an American thing, but you all try to
uh
import that here. Yeah.
well, we have American TV, so we commercialize down there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just going to those areas with our president and our other RISE members,
Mm-hmm.
who know more about those areas more than I did, and then it started to click. It was like, okay, this what my grandfather used to do, except the fact the only difference between me going in those areas and him going in those areas, they know and love him. They don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me another perspective, and I wanted that same kind of love
Mm-hmm.
from those type of areas,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So start doing some research on him to try to figure out like how did he become this great, this legend.
Mm-hmm.
You have his name on the building in Foxhill where he was MP for 25 years.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that don't just happen, overnight or just randomly. So started doing my research, and I went to everyone, like everyone who I could think of, as far as like from a person who making $0 a day to a person who making millions of dollars a day,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone said the exact same thing. Like no one had nothing negative to say about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this. I stopped last year, obviously during the pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
for 3 years I've been looking. I've been
Mm-hmm.
intentionally looking for someone to give me an answer that either you or mommy or Aunt Shelly or Grammy didn't tell us. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to just dive
Mm-hmm.
into those type of details, and then when I found out, for 3 years looking that no one had nothing negative to say about him, that was my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always try to live, when I meet people or just people who I already know, and even people that we might have some issues along the way, that I started reaching out,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to rekindle or just clear the air on things. And I had to give him a lot of credit for that, because like I said, I never met anyone who no one had nothing to say negative about him, and he been on this earth for what, 60 plus years before
67,
he died.
67 or 66, yeah,
You know what I'm
67, I
saying?
think it was, yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
And even before I let Dom speak
66.
on this, even before I let Dom speak onto this, the biggest thing that hit me about George, our grandfather, when he died, I think me and Dom missed, I think a day of school. A day
Mm-hmm.
of school. We missed the next day or that same day, because I think he died that morning. I remember he died in the morning, y'all told us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to school that day, but the next day we didn't go to school. And when we had the funeral, and because we went to St. Anne's during that time, but
Mm-hmm.
we also went to St. Anne's Church during those time. And
Mm-hmm.
for those who don't know, St. Anne's Church and St. Anne's School is on the same in the same
Property.
area,
Mm-hmm.
same property. Yeah. So when we was coming up Fox Hill on St. Anne's side, and I saw the whole school lined up on both sides of the street holding hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, yo, this man is honestly different. Like, I've never been to a funeral where I saw the whole school standing in the hot sun, for someone that they don't even know. You know what I mean? So that was a big thing for me. And I still try, work towards. He he is one of the people that I am chasing. Like how I use a basketball term, like how everyone chases Michael Jordan because he has 6 rings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the standard.
Mm-hmm.
In my life and what I trying to do, between you, him, and some other people, they are my standards that I'm trying to work towards.
Mm-hmm. Cool. 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 Tom, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I remember, uh, Felix's energy, like he had a big energy and personality, so that was the main thing. Like, like super jazzy guy. And then, of course, the pictures with him and his, brother with the racehorse lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then with George, just super generous and caring and um yeah, there's like so many stray dogs that would come into the you know at their house, and so I would get so attached to the stray dogs, and he would also bond with the dogs, and then he would take us through the backyard of his house where all the fruit trees were. So he had such this like deep connection to the environment and nature as well as the people. Um, and I remember when he was home in his bed and he was like traveling. But before I get to that, he also he like really appreciated like organic medicine. So he used to make all this bush
Oh
tea
yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Real.
Mm-hmm.
So he had that relationship to medicine and to life and death in a more like a natural way. And okay, then he was on his bed at home, and I went to see him. When we went to see him, then we went to see Tez, and he never got to meet Tez, so I consider it like his gift to me. And he asked for me, and so we said that we saw each other already, but then he didn't remember. So then we went back to the to the house and saw him. So then since I was only like 9 years old or 8, turning 9, it changed my it helped like my understanding of like what death is like and that process of like leaving the earth and then time that you can like transport and have your memory like spinning so rapidly. Um, then when he was in the hospital, I remember asking if he was dying because I could just sense it. And then I remember when he passed away, his breath, it was like very long, deep breaths. And then everyone kissed him on his forehead around the bed to say goodbye
Mm-hmm.
to him. Then he had the state funeral and a procession. And one of my exhibitions in Vienna now is called The Solemn and Dignified Burial Befitting My Beloved for All Seasons, which is a chapter in his book about his
Okay.
friend's state
Mm-hmm.
funeral. Uh, so then, um, yeah, this relationship to life and death, and you see that in your grandparents, how they perceive their lives looking back a lot. Like, and yeah, he meant a lot to me, and I still think like you don't stop grieving from like your first uh, main death, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, the sheriff was a very unique man. Uh, in many ways, he and his brother, Uncle Winston, they would always be considered to be the life of any party. And if there wasn't a party and the two of those were there was gonna be a party.
Dancing
And
wise or what? Like
whether
I was
it was dancing or it was just cracking jokes or causing
okay.
a joyful time, they made it very joyful and lively and lightly I quite frankly I don't ever know even my lifetime if I remember him in any serious mode other than when he put on that helmet to race his car. I mean, when I say serious, I mean obviously wake wise, yeah. When he was running Three Queens, he had to be taking things with staff and the like and stuff like that. But in terms of whenever you saw him, you saw a big cigar, cowboy boots, a big cowboy hat, if he could wear it. He probably was chewing gum and drinking a Simpoli Girl at the same time. We talking about a character, right? Dominique couldn't write this in his movies when he was doing film, as clear as he would have been. And some of his friends are gonna comment on those, like when they were being kind, right? But basically, he had a smile that radiated and went straight through your soul and caused you, if you were mad, like how Dominic used to get mad deaf, and he smiled at you and started talking at you, all of that madness just disappear, right? He just lightened up the world. I mean, maybe that's how he was able to get somebody off their feet. And I could pop out, but and my other two siblings, but he just had that way, the way with people. And then you get my beloved, who is also a people's person. But he's not as charismatic or whatever the word is, and flamboyant and the like as the sheriff. But I mean, anybody who names himself the sheriff, that's saying something, right? But something like LeBron and the King. But my beloved is, as you know, mostly, and you all have done a lot of research on it. There isn't an individual that he will not stop to talk to. And the same thing with my dad, the sheriff. And so you all have lessons in the two of them. And the more y'all could learn about their lives, I think y'all would see more about y'all's personalities and why you might have what you all have in yourselves. But my beloved used to pick you all up from school, and I used to get fussed out every day by all of my friends whose children was at school when they saw me the wake or in the bank or wherever it was. Why are you not picking up your boys? And my argument to them always was that I will not take that away from your grandparents. If they want to pick you all up, then by all means let them have that exposure in your lives. So much so till they forced my beloved one time to, at least this is how I was told, to, and Maurice Times might be out there, he could chime in, but they forced him to move his presentation in the house up to later time. And so that would interfere, because he always told the prime minister that he will not interfere with his pickups in the House of Assembly. And so he was rushing. And he came, got you all, and then he rushed to drop you all home and to come back to the house and stuff like that. And the vehicle flipped over. He ran through a stop, or the person ran through the stop. Whatever happened, but the two collided, and you all went tumbling. So everybody thought everybody was dead and what have you. But he went back to work, brush off, and kept going. And the next day, and everybody wanted him to go to the hospital and stuff, and he wasn't going to do it because that's not his character. His character was he had to serve, and that was built in and drilled into him, maybe. But that's what always radiated from him, and so forth. And the sheriff always had to entertain. That's the way I looked at them. They will not let you go through a day feeling down and out and drummed down and stuff like that. They always picked up the energy for you and what have you, and so forth. Dominic would have liked him. They probably would have fussed for most of the time, but they would have liked each other. Say that again, Dev. Go ahead.
No, just saying that remind me of Chad.
Like a huge wave, like
you
going down.
Yeah.
Felix's energy was like a huge wave. Like you walk in the room and his energy just like hits you in the face.
Yeah.
But with George, if someone else besides George came to pick us up from the pool at QC or something like that, I wouldn't get in the car unless it was George.
Yeah, but you were special to him though, because I mean he used to go sit there and wait for you when you was then there. If he didn't, he didn't do it because of his work, but when you came along, he just made it a point. He would be to school, but the school used to like it because then they used to have these counseling sessions before school out with all of the parents, and everybody wanted to know what's happening, and what the government is doing, the this, the that, and what all is happening. And so they used to it's almost be like an under the tree conversation for about a half an hour or so in the schoolyard, and the like you say, people follow people, and they had that. The two of them had that charisma and that magnetism. That's the word I'm looking for. That people wanted to follow them. So let's hear what Anthony Booth Weish had to say about his good friend Uncle Fee, as we call him. He called himself the sheriff, but most people used to call him Uncle Fee. That's what he had to say.
Fee, a gentleman, a scholar, an entrepreneur, a stylish dresser. His personality was one that was full of life. He was a person that had the art of making you look at the bright side of life. If there ever was a time a friend needed assistance, Felix was always there to assist in any way that he could. Whether it was a job at the Three Cranes restaurant, the family business that he managed for many years, or some financial assistance. He was an avid race car driver and well known as the Sheriff. He drove a Hemi Cuda in competition at the Queen Elizabeth Sports Center racecourse. Those who knew him well knew that his greeting was always, "Hey, my brother." In those days, there were not many with his personality, his gentle spirit, and his generosity. These are some of my memories of Felix as a friend and big brother. Thank you.
Yeah. So what we saw in Uncle Fee as his friends in college would say, I give you an example. When I would have been about 10 or thereabouts, he used to have a Volkswagen bus. You know the ones which you see in the almost the hippie movies kind of thing, where you go way back. Well, that was standard shift, obviously, because him being the racer that he was always racing, and so he taught us how to what we call power shift. Now, I couldn't stand up or sit in the seat to even reach the steering wheel because he used to put me on the steering wheel, and when he turned the steering wheel, you go round and round in circles with as the steering wheel turn. But they had this way of power shifting where they shift the car without taking your foot off the gas pedal, right? And so they used to have, when we would go to the racetrack, the back of the bus had coolers or garbage containers of drinks and so forth for refreshments for the team and supporters and the like. So like I say, he was always carrying a party with him. And so all of the young children, like Selves and Peppy and Dylan and everybody else all the boys would be piled up in the bus. And so they would tie the Hemi Cuda onto the back of the bus and pull it to the stadium. And one time, it was one of the few times I saw him when he got mad outside on the track itself. They blocked the sports center's gate. I don't know if you remember now, coming from Thompson Boulevard into the sports center, there used to be a gate there. And they let all the other racers in, and then they blocked the gate so that he could not get in because they didn't want to lose, because he would always predict, like Muhammad Ali, one of his friends, that who he would beat and how bad he would beat them. And he always won. He was always the champion down there. For whatever reason, he became the champion. But they blocked the gate. And he told the security and everybody else, a couple of choice words. And then he said, unleash this car. And he went and fired up that big, I think it was a 350 or so, Charlie could probably say. But for back then, in the early, that would be 70s, late 70s, that was a huge engine in those cars. And he said he would knock that gate down and anybody else who was in the way to get there. And they went in, and obviously he won those races. And I'll tell you another story about him and racing when we come back after this particular one, which is Charlie himself. Give us a little word from on him. So here we go.
My name is Charles Taylor. I met Felix many, many years ago. As a matter of fact, I can't even remember how long ago it was. I was a boy. He was just a little bit more than me, my senior. We were related, his mother and my father being first cousins, so we had a close bond. As the years passed, we grew to grown men and we began to hang out together. Industry queens, and we also traveled together. But the memories that I have of him that is very, very fond is when he raced the race car that he had, which was the Hemi Cuda. He would go to the track with his cowboy hat on, and he would have his handcuff, and we call him the sheriff. The handcuff is because he said he's taking prisoners today. And before we'd go to the track, he would look at me and he'd say, Lily. He calls me Lily. Whenever he's going to say something mischievous, he called me Lily or Diamond. And he would say, Diamond, I'm taking no prisoners today. And he would go in that car and he would just beat whoever he got to beat, and then we would go and celebrate. But Felix was a fun guy. And he always had something to say that was humorous, but it made sense. He would say things to me like, Diamond, listen, when these jokers come around here, let them know that I am the sheriff. It got to a point where he began to say he is the sheriff and I am the deputy. So all the Audrey Newell and those racers would call me deputy. And so if I were to talk anything about Felix, my memories for him would really be the days of the race car. Those were the highlight of our relationship.
Awesome. So, Dev and Dom, that gives you a picture of a couple of friends who would have talked about Uncle Fee. I don't know if Daniel's out there. I'm sure she have totally different views of him because the Knowles men treated boys or young men different than they treated girls. The girls were named queens, all of them. And at the time he was running Three Queens restaurant and so forth. And so what they did is they were treated special and they got gifts and stuff when the boys would get one bicycle for about 20 or 30 children to share, whereas the girls got all these nice things, dresses, whatever else, and so forth. So they treated ladies special, and that was a part of their character too. They loved ladies. So I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like he was not an entertainer of ladies either. That's just a part of his character. So,
Makes sense.
huh?
I just say it makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to pull up a picture for persons to see. I'll get it back as we talk. So here is let me play Father McCartney's take on My Beloved, and then we'll come back to another one who I know you both know very well. on the second one. So let's play McCartney's one first.
Key. I only encountered him several times when I visited St. Anne's Parish as a younger priest. What stands out to me was his dedication. I remember him making incense the old-fashioned way, with native trees before Mass. Skills like that seem to be lost. He also always had an encouraging word, and he made sure to know who your family was when speaking to you, which allowed him to know who you were. Another nearly lost art of community building. I respect that about your mother, Mrs. R.I.S. Knowles, as well. May he rest in peace. Father Enrique McCartney.
Yes, and the Father McCartney is the assistant priest at St. Christopher's, where we go at this time. And so he had the good pleasure of meeting my beloved, who was a catechist for more years than y'all probably been on this earth at St. Anne's. That's like CEO of sorts of the church itself, not the priest or any of those, but just the person who actually makes things happen. So Leroy Thompson here says that my beloved turned a group of young men into men when he took the junior league, senior league St. Michael's Dodgers baseball team into the senior league. Actually, I was a part of that. We all grew into excellent men because of his leadership and sponsorship. And what happened in that scenario is your Uncle Charlie used to manage the junior league team. And we were an exceptional team. And so we were of the age to be between senior league and junior league and playing. And they always had us play with the guys bigger than us also, because they want you to get better. That's the way we used to stretch you then, right? These days, people just want to play with their own, who they could dominate. But they wanted you to play with people who would have been bigger, stronger, harder, whatever, than you. And so we went to the senior league, and he was also, I think he was still the president of the Bahamas Baseball Association. So Charlie took us up into the senior league, and it ended up being that just about every one of the starters on junior league were becoming the starters on the senior league, and the senior leaguers didn't like that. And so there was going to be some fights and the like and stuff like that. And my beloved came there, and he did his hand like Moses still and stuff like that. And the next thing you know, everything was calm, cool, and collective. Some of the senior leaguers who weren't playing anymore might have dropped off, but that would have been the first and probably only year that St. Michael's Dodgers came close to winning and getting into the playoffs, even though we know they cheat to keep us out, right? But, you know, little ranky-dinky St. Michael's Dodgers ain't supposed to be in no playoffs. But you know how that go. But just the way he dealt with the people on the team. Some of those players had been with the St. Michael's senior team for the years. And they felt slighted that young Charlie would have just bring up all these young upstarts to play on the senior league team. And actually, most of the junior league teams, those players went on to be exceptional players. Some played pro ball, and some just went on to be exceptional college players and the like. So that was a big thing there. And then we have the good one from your good people that you know about. And
thank you for the opportunity to share with your listening audience in this moment, and to be able to celebrate and to testify of the worth and work of someone whose life as a male, as a father figure, impacted minds. It's interesting because we find ourselves in this season where we celebrate the gift of fatherhood and also celebrate and recognize those who have accepted the responsibilities of fathering. And I want to talk about one George Mackey, whose life as a male and as a father impacted mine for good and for God. So many times we talk about politicians and we paint them in a negative light, but my story is a positive story of a politician whose life impacted mine. And I can remember very well in 1982, during the campaign for the general election in the then St. Michael's constituency, a group of us as young children were walking behind the late George Mackey as he was campaigning through Yonge Street. And we were just in the vicinity of the old residence of the first Baptist Governor General, the late Sir Clifford Darling. And George Mackey spun around in the road, and out of all of the children that were present, he spoke directly to me. He said, "Terrence, what are your plans for high school?" I said to him that I had recently taken the examination for R.I.S.E. Manifesting Junior High School, where all of my older siblings had gone. I said, and I'm about to take the entrance exam for Aquinas College. I said, but my mom already told me that even if I passed for Aquinas College, she would not be able to afford the tuition, so I was not to build my hopes up. And on the spot, George Mackey said to me, "Terrence, if you pass your exam for Aquinas College, I will pay your school fees from grade 7 until you graduate." Well, I didn't take much note of what he said, but I know certainly it inspired me as a young person. I took the exam, and with some pulling and hauling, I was accepted into Aquinas because of the late Father Sylvan Broman Shankel and now Monsignor John Johnson. And suffice it to say that George Mackey came back when it was nearing time for school to open to find out whether or not I had been accepted to Aquinas College. And once he learned that I had been accepted to Aquinas College, there began a journey of 6 years, where for 6 years, without fail, he paid my school fees to Aquinas College. In those days, the school fee started off at $180 per semester, and he underwrote the cost of my tuition. But not just underwriting the cost of my tuition, he took interest in my behavior and in my grades. And of course, there were times I was not the best behaved student, and I can hear Mr. Vincent Ferguson, the late Vincent Ferguson, saying, "I'm going to call Mr. Mackey because I suspect you're wasting his money in this period." And so he allowed me to be a part of his family, and he shared with me in my own evolution as a male and as someone who ultimately would answer the call of God to Christian or ordained ministry. As I think about the life of the late Mr. George Mackey, I think to myself that he was in touch with his own humanity. And having been in touch with his own humanity, he was able to reach beyond and to do for others what he wished that he was able to have done in some instances for himself, and also to push young people into that place of excellence. And so I pause today to say thank you to him, to his memory, to his legacy. I say thanks to Mom Betty and to my sister Phaedra and Michelle for allowing me to share a wonderful human being in the gift of husband, your father. And I pray that my life, having been enriched by his, would touch others. And I tell you this, having been impacted by the late Mr. George Mackey in this manner, I have made it my aim to pay it forward and to provide opportunities for others to become, to maximize their full potential and to grow. And so I say to those who are fathers, be encouraged. I say to those who have accepted the role as fathers, be encouraged. I say to those who are fathers and not doing the best job that they can, pull up your socks, because you never know that the life you impact will impact hundreds, thousands for good and for God. I thank you, Brother Happy, for allowing me to share this experience. Be blessed.
Yes, so we heard some of the things from prominent persons on both your grandparents' lives and so forth. And just to give persons an idea out there, that would be considered the sheriff in his fatigues going to the racetrack preparing. Notice he had the cigar in his right hand, didn't go too far away. He had on his racing boots there, which was his cowboy boots, but you know, that was part of his trademark, that he would be. And R.I.S.E is still on the screen and so forth. Sorry about that, people. And then that's him when and the Hemi Cuda back then. And then we always have also the Honorable George William Mackey, as we know him today. So Dom and Dev, it's a little long ride. Took you all longer than I think you all expected, but I hope that some of the comments that persons would have posted on Facebook and YouTube, you would see and get a feel for your grandparents, your grandfathers, and what they were about and the like. Jacqueline Popel Duncombe here says that, wow, what a testimony, Reverend T.G. Morrison. God be the glory. Keep impacting lives, etc. So, what thoughts you have having this now experience with persons sharing in the way they've shared on your two grandparents?
It's motivation to keep on going and keep on striving for better and just continue to put in that work to keep on achieving new goals, and life goes on as long as you breathing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have opportunity to do something great. So their history and seeing how people react to them, you know, it's all motivation for me.
Awesome. Dom?
Yeah, yeah, they're both very passionate and caring, and seems they
Are you
had a
cracking up?
bright life and impacted. Pardon?
As I say, you're cracking up or fading or whatever.
They had a bright life and impacted everyone, you know, with their brilliance. So it seems to be a great model to have in life.
Yeah, if I could add on, it just I have some posters in my room, and I'm gonna show everyone my posters today. But one poster I have in my room is Kobe Bryant, and just to add on to what Dom was saying just now, I remember before Kobe died, I was following Kobe more so post basketball than during basketball, because you know he just used to kill my team all the time, so I never did really like him. But as I got older and I realized what he actually was doing and why he was going so hard and stuff like that. There's this interview where this guy asked him about his last injury, and his last injury is a torn Achilles, and most people are not able to walk on a torn Achilles, right? So, but when Kobe torn his Achilles, he got up, he went to the free throw line, he leaned on one leg, the other leg that was healthy, hit our two free throws, and walked back to the locker room. Now, if for those sports people that don't know how serious this injury is, this injury makes 7-footers, big grown men, need a wheelchair and 2-3 guys to carry them to the locker room. But Kobe was one of the rare people who just walked off the court.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was asking him about it, and he was saying like, at the end of the day, it's bigger than me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked him, what does that mean? And he was like, like I spent my whole life playing basketball, so the fact that I personally got hurt during the sport that I love, the way that I feel in that moment, is bigger than how I really feel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's thousands of people watching me. There's fans who came to pay and see me perform. So my job is here to perform. And from when I got injured, the game of basketball is bigger than me. So when I hear these stories now about George and the sheriff, Uncle Felix,
Mm-hmm.
grandfather Felix, it just shows me like they are the understanding of life, and their impact is bigger than what how they felt. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure every day George didn't want talk to everyone that he wants to speak to, but his purpose requires him to communicate with people.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the sheriff. I sure every day he didn't wake up in such a big jolly mood,
Mm-hmm.
but he is known for putting smiles on people's faces and bringing them up and making light of life. Just enjoying it. So yeah, that was just my little
Yeah. So
2 cents
Dom,
to add on to that.
yeah, Dom, before you go, just a little short story on that same point that you just mentioned there. My beloved, for people who didn't know, suffered gravely from sinus. And he used bush medicine a lot of times to help him with clearing his sinus, to the point where he went to one bush doctor one time, and his daughters was all freaked out because I guess they pour some stuff down in his sinus and all kind of stuff come out of his head, and they thought they was pulling his brains out of his head. Or anyway, the bottom line was, one time he was in the bank and he had one of those sinus attacks, and he had to lay on the ground so he could just calm himself or whatever it is that you do. And persons in the bank freaked out because they thought he was dead or having a heart attack and the rest, and so forth. And so he came home laughing about it. But the people in the bank, when I went there the next couple of days, they were not pleased. Right? They were scared. They thought he was gone. And like you say, the way people just magnetated to him, they wasn't having it. They say he could not die that day. That was not going to be on their watch, even though it was just a sinus attack. Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dom. Hello, Dom.
I wasn't saying anything.
No, I was asking.
I wasn't saying anything.
All right. Well, I thought you were going to add to what Dave had to say on
Sorry.
that point. So tell us then. You've heard all of these goodies and the like, and you've been children yourself, now young men in the 20s. So what do you think, or what would you like to see? Because I'm never going to let my guests go away without saying something that they would like to see better in the Bahamas. How would you like to see it done that would happen to allow more children to be able to benefit from fathers and father figures that are similar to Uncle Fee and my beloved, or any others that you would have seen? There's so many out there. They've talked about R.I.S.E and the like, and Scrooge last week on about him not having fathers figures, and it was just them and the boys became fathers for each other, kind of thing. So, what are your thoughts on that? What would you like to see happen differently so that more people, more children, could get access to father figures?
I mean, that question could go really, really, really deep, because that's a lot of programming and information passing on. I personally feel as if um the fathers or the older men of children or countries or neighborhoods or sports teams or regular groups of people, I feel as if the older generation just need to realize that there is enough for everybody. Like if you're in a company, like if you're the boss, like there's enough money for you to make and your mentee to make. You don't
Mm-hmm.
always have to look at the younger person as a threat. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like we're not trying. Like I can speak for millennials. Like millennials is not trying to take food out of people's mouths. Some are
Mm-hmm.
because that's what they're trained to do.
Mm-hmm.
But studying this world and just realizing, the fact that the world is built off capitalism. They print money every day or every year. So like the fact that you're holding out on knowledge that could help a younger person because you looking at as a younger person as a threat, we're not gonna grow. We can't grow that way, because yeah, you can't grow that way. So I would like to see, and I don't know if I'll be able to see it in my lifetime, but I'm striving towards it. I'm trying to gain my resources, so I could help fund and help younger people, grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the main thing. Like just holding out on information. Like why are you holding out on information? Like okay, why are you holding out on every single dollar? Like I just feel as if the same thing with like the universe. Like I said earlier with the God situation, how He made the earth. Like you give and you receive more. You plant
Mm-hmm.
a mango seed or pineapple seed, you're gonna get a ton of
Okay.
mangoes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just yeah, it's sad, you know, but I don't know. But that's what I think. I think it's just more so just giving back, like
Mm-hmm.
teaching.
Cool. Okay. So Dom, anything you want to add to that?
More books and movies would be good about the country's history. I remember when uh, the National Heroes book came out, and George was in one of them. And you know, there's so many like, films or videos, but or documentaries, but there's so much more information that can be shared as well.
Yeah, also to add, um, from a millennial perspective too, you know, yeah, you might have someone who above you who has the ultimate control on your future. Don't look at that as the end or like there's always a way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you just need to get better. Some from my biggest journey and like from changing myself in order to be better for myself and the world and the people around me and my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that sometimes you will have to just look in the mirror and be like, I'm not really that good to do what I think I'm able to do at that certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So and just for everyone, just look at yourself, just like how you look at your child or you would look at the schools that you decide to send your child to. Like just look at everything about yourself. Look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses, and just try just try to get better. That's
Mm-hmm.
my motto. Get better every day. Like
Right.
that's my motto.
Cool. All right. And my last question, I've been asking you all a bunch of questions, and now I always give my guests the opportunity to say whatever they want to say to the public. If there's anything you want to say out there, I started off by saying Happy Father's Day to everybody, but whatever you get, you got a minute or two, something you want to express. I know Dom, you got a lot of shows coming up. You talked about some of those already.
Mine is short and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is just for everyone. Millennials, baby boomers, everyone. Don't expect or don't wait for people to give you what you want. And that could be from your parents, your significant other, your teacher, government, all that stuff. Especially during this COVID time, like you never know what's gonna happen the next day. So the only thing you could do is whatever you could do. So don't worry about, oh, we can't do this because the policies are set this way. You know, I personally feel as if there's always a way. If you look hard enough, you could find a way.
Yeah. God, family, and hustle.
God, family, hustle, NACO sports coming soon.
Tom? Oh, he's scratching his head. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, so you asked about the exhibition. So there's one now at Emmanuel Bayer Gallery, a show of paintings of mine in Vienna, and that's until July 31st of this year. And then there's, yeah, just more exhibitions. At Chart Gallery in New York, which is July 15th, and one at Stars in Hollywood in LA, which is the 31st of July. So, yeah, they're open to the public, and it's great that we can have exhibitions again after COVID.
Awesome. Well, Dom and Dev, you're almost a quarter of a century on average between the two of you. So, we got to honor, take advantage of any opportunity you have. And I know it might be another month before I see you in person. But, well, actually, no, because you say you might be coming this week. So, but I'd like to thank you both for coming on and sharing your views on fatherhood, and hopefully somebody out there would have benefited from it and could see that life isn't as hard as people think it is. I always say anything God deems worthy is simple, but it mightn't be easy. So, but with mentorship and friends and the like, you could always find your way, as David mentioned just now. But so we'd like to thank you both for sharing, and also wish you all the best. Prayers more for your successes, that you continue to move on so you could expand your territory as Jabez was taught, and we could move forward. And so we'd like to probably invite you to come back individually so you could talk specifically about the things that you all are would be digging into. Dom, you in the art world, and Deb, you in the, well, you in the art world too, but just a different angle, and so forth. So thank you both.
Yeah, man, appreciate it, Pops.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One love. We
Thank
also
you.
like to
Happy Father's
thank
Day.
you. Thank you. We all like to thank all of those out there who've endured the show and listened to us and found some value in it. There's a lot of posts on Facebook, and I think YouTube also, and that we were not able to get to put on the screen. Some of it very lengthy, and so you can read those. And there's one from Mario Ford and Tommy Stubbs, and I think I saw a couple other pretty long ones, which was pretty touching. So people should probably want to encourage you to read those, and as we move forward.
Shout out to everyone that commented and watched the show. We appreciate y'all.
Yes. And as we are about to take our leave, we want you to always to like, subscribe, and share it with all the persons, put it in the schools, children, and the like, so that they can benefit from these shows. Because the purpose is for the benefit of you out there in the world, not necessarily me or anything. It's just a platform that reach out to persons who are doing novel things and innovative things to come on board and share their things, so that we could talk about things that is more than just doctor, lawyer, accountant, the ruckus of politics and the like. Let's expand our narratives as we move forward. And so we ask you to pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. We want you to stay safe, be guarded, be wise, be smart. And next time we see you, same place, same time, we will be right here. Madam Producer, you've been awesome. You weathered the storm. And I know you're operating on fumes, but you can take us to the extra. Devonn, Dom, thank you kindly. See you shortly.
Now,
Good night.
Thank you.
night.
Join Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles as a friend and sponsor. Contact us at something2think242@gmail.com or WhatsApp us at 242-424-0257.